Steven Adams is a almost 35-year industry veteran, the co-owner of Moxie Hair Salon, the founder of Beauty Certified Education Association, the co-owner of Steps Hair Shop, and an international educator and a platform artist for Aveda, Paul Mitchell, and Nick Orojo. Today, we're going to hear how he got to where he is, everything that he's accomplished, and the path that he took to get there. Welcome back to the Hairdresser Strong Show. My name is Robert, and I am your host. Today, I'm here with Steven Adams. How you doing today, Steven?
I am doing fantastic. Thank you so much for having me on Hairdresser Strong podcast. I think it's awesome. I've been watching and following, so it's really cool. So thank you for having me on here.
Absolutely, and thank you for supporting the channel. Um, so I wanted to just give a little context. To the viewers and listeners, we were at my wife and I, and as Hairdresser Strong, went to Serious Business in New Orleans, and I got asked to do a haircut on stage to like be a model, and I'm backstage and waiting, and Steven's right there, and we just start talking, and I'm like, this is a cool guy, and your outfit. Well, you were wearing a suit, and what was it? It
Oh,
was
I was wearing my Pac-Man suit.
Pac-Man suit. Yeah, I was like, man, this guy, I love this guy. And then just coincidentally, I think it was the next day, we were
Yeah.
at the PBA Professional Beauty Association lunch, and we sat next to each other. I have to say that you were on my right side, and I'm deaf in my right ear, and so I only heard a little bit about what you were talking about at the table. So I'm really excited and happy to have you on the show, so I can actually get a chance to talk to you and hear your story. All of this stuff that you do is really cool. Why I don't I'm wondering, like, did you let's start at the beginning. Did you go to hair school? Did you do an apprenticeship program?
Yeah, I did actually both. Um, so yeah, I started doing hair about 35 years ago. It was kind of a crazy thing. I never thought I would ever be a hairdresser. This is like the last thing I ever thought I would ever do. I had never even been in a hair salon until the day that I went into a hair salon to apply for a job, which I didn't really even apply for a job. It all happened because some dude picked me up. He was like, came into the coffee shop that I always have to start here because this is where it started. I worked at a coffee shop back in, it must have been 86, 87. Back then, there weren't very many coffee shops. So there was like one, and I happened to work it, and I was managing. And this guy would always drive up in his brown Mercedes, pull up front, rush in, always order a double espresso, and always pay with a $5 bill. And I saw this cycle every day. They do exactly the same thing. So every time I saw him pulled up, I'd start his espresso. I'd have his change ready. So he'd just be like, quick, in and out action. And one
Right.
day he just stops and he's like, I need you to work for me.
Yeah, me too.
And I was like, cool.
That attitude, it's
Cool.
awesome.
I was like, great. How much you going to pay me? Because that's all I care about at the moment. And he's like, I'll pay you more than you make here. And then I was like, wait, what the heck does this guy even do? I know nothing about him except that he drinks double espresso. I'm like, what? Well, what do you want? What do you want me to do? And he's like, I own a hair salon just down the mall. And I started laughing. I'm like, what the hell am I going to do in a hair salon? I hope I can swear once in a while.
Yeah.
Is that okay?
Yeah, that's okay.
You can cut it out. I'll try not to.
Okay.
But all of a sudden, he was like, so he's like, I own a hair salon. Come and check it out. He's like, if you like it, you can work. If you don't, then you stay here. And I was like, cool. So I went down into the hair salon and I was like, what do you want me to do? And he's like, he had a 20-chair hair salon back then. And it was an Aveda salon. And all they carried was Aveda. So that was relatively new in that era. He was one of the first concept salons. And so Harry was his name. And he was like, I just want you to hang up coats, greet people, smile, tell the stylist that they're here. That's it. Just hang out, just do that. And I'm like doing that. And back then I was watching the receptionist. She was like overwhelmed. She had two phones, but it was just her working. And at that point, we didn't have anything automated, and she was writing everything on paper. And so I'm like watching her. I'm like, can't start answering phones. I'm like, Harry, Nick, and friends, how can I help you? And then they would like say stuff. I have no idea what it was, and I just wrote it down. I'm like, someone's on hold here for you next. And so I just started helping her out. And all of a sudden I was like, I could easily do this job. This is simple. I could just like hang out. I can work and manage the front of the salon. Great. And as I was doing that, then Harry's like, actually, I really want you to do is become my apprentice. Learn the trade, learn the whole thing. So I learned the front desk. I started working on haircutting and color with him. And then he was like, I don't know what I'm doing. Let's get you into beauty school. And so he helped me get enrolled into beauty school and worked out with the school that I could still manage his salon and go to school. So if they had an emergency, I could escape and I'd
Nice.
have to like keep going back and forth. And so it was like I worked basically two full-time jobs going through, beauty school. It was just kind of like I think all I did was work. My wife was not happy, but that's all right. It's like you got to do. And I found something that was really, ended up, it was really cool. It was a really cool way of learning about everything because I learned the business side first. And then I learned the technical side of hair. And I just really got into like I really got into it. It was just like fun. It was exciting, and it was like people and working with people. And but this before that, I'd never been in a hair salon. I had no idea what that was even about. I hadn't been in a barber shop, nothing. So I'm like, it was all new and fresh. It was kind of awesome. So I worked for Harry for about 3 years in Milwaukee, and I was sent up a few times to work at go up to Aveda for training for like product knowledge and stuff like that. And while I was up there, I was recruited to work for Horst and his salons. And I thought about it, and I had a long conversation with Harry, and I'm like, dude, I think it's time. I think I've done everything at your salon. I went from being work in the front, I went through the assistant program, apprenticed, I went to school, I built my clientele, I reached a really peak. But the way he had his everything structured, it didn't give me opportunity for that much more growth.
So how long into it are we talking about at this
About
point?
3 years.
Okay,
So
3 years.
about 3 years. And so I ended up getting they asked me to come up. And so I was like, you know what? I'm going to just risk it and move to Minneapolis and take this opportunity. And I went to work for David Wagner had just started being the vice president or the president of Horst Salons at that time. So Horst still owned it. David Wagner was just stepping in, and they just merged the two companies together. And it was just kind of like a really cool time to enter, but I had to start over as an apprentice again.
Oh, wow.
So I had to start assisting again and not. So I ended up, but because everything was shifting, I also got lost they were like, oh yeah, you can start, but you'll only assist for like 3 months. But it was about almost 2 years before I got back on the floor
Wow.
doing hair. And
So, sorry, just for
yeah,
context, for anybody listening or watching, you said Horst Salons?
Horst Salon. So
Can
Horst
you give me
Reckelbacher,
context?
yeah, Horst Reckelbacher is the guy who started Aveda, and these are his salons. And now those salons are called Jute, owned by David Wagner, who's AKA the Daymaker.
Okay, cool.
So I have, so I got really lucky to go into his salons when they were at their like prime and their heyday, and just kind of like really grew with them, which was kind of cool. So I ended up apprenticing there for about 2 years, starting all over. I knew nobody. And the hardest part was you had to have 3 models every Monday, same haircuts. Didn't matter what, if it was a little bowl bob for a nun, you had to do a nun haircut on 3 people. And if you didn't, you'd get fired. So we didn't
Wow.
have Instagram. You had to just run around town, and whenever you weren't working, you had to find people. So you had to hustle and just like get out there and get people in your chair. And so every Monday Monday I had a 9 o'clock, a 10 o'clock, and 11 o'clock. And I'll always remember those three because I had to fill them in every single Monday. And I went into the haircutting program for them. So went through all the education training, and how I ended up. I grew within that company after about it was about a year and a half. I was like, okay, if I'm not going to get off the floor unless I get myself off the floor. And so I really started pushing myself to encourage every single client that I touched, which was probably 5 people an hour. I would shampoo 5 or 6 people an hour. And so every single person, I'd be like, hey, do you have any friends? Do you have kids? Do you have a significant other? Do you have somebody? Just send them to me. I'm going to be on the floor any day soon. And so finally, they just kept getting phone calls that, like Steven, everybody wanted to get in with Steven. And so they like, okay, we got to put him on the floor. And
That's a lesson to any rising stylist listening right now.
yeah,
What matters at the end of the day is, can you get people through the door?
exactly. It's not, and I will say this, even as a salon owner I've owned my salon now 25 years, and it's like, as a salon owner, what's more important to me isn't like getting through the program. I don't care about getting through the program. You can get through the program as fast as it takes or as low as it takes, but what's important is, can you get people to come in the door and stay?
Totally.
And that's the trick of becoming a really great hairdresser, is like, that's just as simple as that. What's your retention? And what's your drive to get people in? What's your demand? And what I learned really quickly is you need demand. So even though this was my second salon, I knew that I suddenly had to have like a lot of demand, because if I didn't have demand, I would never get put on the floor. And I'd just be shampooing and shampooing and shampooing. And it was just like, no, got to get demand. So the minute I did that, then it's like I would say at that point, 90% of my clients were kids. But I don't care. Kids, parents pay for their kids, and it was great. I just built my business. I was like the kitty barber, but it was awesome. It got me in, and I got to work right next door and right the chair next to the artistic director for horse salons at that point, Denny Kemp, and it was awesome because we had a really good relationship, and I assisted under him. So it's like his clients we just like fed off of each other, which was great. But that also helped launch me into the education program. So what happened was Denny was doing a big show in New Orleans. I do believe it was the Singer Theater. It was either the Singer Theater or the one across the street from the Roosevelt. I can't remember, but I'm pretty sure it was the Singer Theater. And we were doing a big show because this was right when David took over completely. He was 100%, and he was 100% owner of horse salons. Hadn't changed the name yet to Jute, but was almost ready to. And David was doing a tour for Aveda across the country. And so Denny was like, Steven has to come with me because he helped me like design the show and we knew what the show was going to be about. So we happened to be in New Orleans, and Denny's dad ended up getting sick. And the day before we were supposed to do our show, and Denny's like, I gotta go. And he left. And he had to go home. And at that point, David was like, who knows how everything is gonna run? And I was like, I do. I just said yes. And so he's like, can you do everything that Denny was gonna do? I'm like, yeah. Maybe.
Just say yes and figure it out later.
I just said yes. And I'm like, yeah, I can totally do it. I'm gonna do it. And so I ended up doing my very, very first hair show or educational experience in front of about 3,000 people in a full packed theater. And I was pretty much, oh my God, I don't know what I was doing. I think I was just shaking. I barely remember it. But the only thing that was encouraging was someone yelled my name from the audience, which totally surprised me. So somebody I knew was there, shouted my name, and I was like, okay, I have something. But man, but because of that and that experience, then David Wagner asked me to be part of the education program and start training the newbies. So I basically was on the floor maybe 6 months to a year as a stylist there, but because of my experience and because of how I built and because of where I've been, it gave me that little extra edge to be able to help start working on their education team. So then I started working on the education team for horse salons and training all the new stylists and working with all the apprentices and working under, having apprentices work under me, which was really cool until right before I left in 1999 or 1998. I had then we did another tour of stuff for Aveda, and I ended up like leading a lot of those classes, which was really cool.
Nice.
And then when they were switching the name from horse salons to jute, that was at the time where I'd like reached all of my goals that I set with David, because I sat down with him before and I gave him like, these are all the goals I want to reach, and I reached all of them. The only one that I hadn't reached was open my own salon. And so I had a little sit down with David and I was like, hey, it's time. I got to do it. I just felt it. It was like, you just know when you're like, I wasn't following my dream. So it was time for me to open my own salon. And I told him that. And he's like, well, will this number keep you? And was really tempted. I was like, yeah, yeah, I will. But then I'm like, no, I have to follow my heart on this. And I went, and that's when I opened up Moxie Hair Salon. And I just promised him, I'm like, I'm going to give you like 6 months notice. I'm not going to tell anybody I'm leaving. I'm not going to pull any of your team. I'm not going to like try to do anything shady. If I need help with it, I'll ask you to help me. I just want you to know that thank you for everything. And that's the cool thing about that, like leaving in that kind of way. Like I still have a good relationship with him. So it's like, I think it's really important
How
to
long?
do
Okay,
that.
so how? Okay, you went to you worked the front desk at the first salon, and then you started assisting, and then you apprenticed, and then you went to school, and that
Yep.
was over the course of a year, less than a year before you
That
went
was
to.
about that was about 3 years. So it was about 3 years when I was in Milwaukee. And
Okay,
then that must have been 1990 when I moved to Minneapolis.
okay,
So from 90 to it was like 99 when I opened my salon. So
okay. All
98,
right, yeah, that
99.
gives. Okay, that's context that I think is
Yeah. So that way I was there for almost 9 years.
okay. So it's not like you went there, you got through the program, you build a book
Oh
in
no,
2 or 3 years.
no. It was like blood, sweat, and tears, like
Yeah.
working behind the chair. I was doing, again, I was only cutting hair. At that point, if you think about the 90s, high expensive haircut at that time was like 65, $75 a haircut. And I was charging $60 a haircut, doing about average of 20 to 22 haircuts a day for 4 to 5 days a week. If you
Jeez.
do the math, you can figure out what I was making.
Yeah, but it's
Oh,
also so many people.
it was so many people, but I had assistants, like I had someone helping shampoo. I had somebody doing blow drying. I had two
Mm,
people that I worked with that did all my color. So like
okay.
every client, I would do consultations while they were doing color. I would just like, you learn to multitask and like delegate and trust. And if I train my assist, biggest thing, this is where I learned the most important lesson, I think, of working with an assistant. An assistant isn't there to do your work. The assistant is there to make you better, but they're only as good as you train them. So if I have a job for them for like shampooing per se, my job is to make sure that I train them to be the best shampooer and to understand the timing of it all. And if they're training them to be a great blow dryer, I need to make them technically great, but understand the timing of it all, because it's all about timing when it comes in, especially when you're working that fast.
Mhm.
Because my goal was still to do a good consultation before they started. Make sure that you like stay on that. Make sure that you focus on that piece. Make sure you focus on you're present when you are doing their hair. And then make sure that at the end, after they're blown out, you do a little and make it wow. And if you do that and focus on it, because then those things happen. To make things happen, you have to focus on them, I guess. You know, uh,
So so we're looking at like about 12 years in, you open up your salon,
yep,
and then I'm curious, so in the opening, you talked about platform artistry, international education, but the founder of Beauty Certified Education Association.
Yeah.
When did that come in, and is that the next thing that you did, or like put that into
No,
some context?
yeah, I can go really quickly over it. It's like, so what happened was working through Horse kind of gave me a foundation. That's also where I started working in the peer professional program. And I was in some of the first peer professional program, which was really cool for the about 8 years that I worked at Jute. So it gave me the opportunity to work with some really cool people and get to meet some really, people like Van Michael and Ginger Boyle and some heavy hitters in our industry. And I got to meet when they were, just beginning their career also, which was really awesome, or where they were already at their pinnacle peak. So opening up the salon Moxie in 1999, started with just me, two business owners, two business partners, and then just kind of like it just kind of worked its way out, but grew. So about 13 years, it would be 13 years ago now. So whatever that would be, 25. So about halfway through Moxie, started up Beauty Certified Education Association. And what Beauty Certified Education Association is a professional beauty association that is designed to offer continuing education for the state of Minnesota because we're required to have continuing education. But it's also about building community. It's about building, like pulling people together so that we're not competing against each other. Because I feel like so many salons are they won't share or they won't help or they don't give enough like working together. And it was kind of like built as a resource, but really the foundation of it was, sorry to say, it was because I was a little irritated because the people that lobbied to get this continuing education for the state of Minnesota was another professional association that works with a lobbyist. And when they wrote the law, because it was actually made in law with the state, and when they wrote the law, it stated that it had to be a nonprofit association
Oh,
that could only offer the continuing education. And I was like, wait, that means you just built yourself a monopoly.
yes.
That's not cool. Even though I was like a big member of their association and taught a lot for them, I was like, this is not cool. And so I was like, that can't happen. We can't have that. And so I teamed up and like we started this. We started Beauty Certified Education basically to combat it. And then as I was combating it, I was like, we can do a lot of stuff online because I'm a very strong advocate of technology and a strong advocate for being kind of like thinking ahead of the game. And I'm just like, we got to do this. We're going to do online because think about all the people that live in rural Minnesota or like happen to live in Illinois, but they keep their license maintained in Minneapolis. That would mean they would have to drive to Minneapolis to an in-person class just to get certified for education. So this is where I started to get really involved with the Board of Cosmetology in the state of Minnesota. And I had to prove to them that I was a real association, even though we had no idea what we were doing. I was like, we're an association. And I made my nonprofit and got it all set. And then I had to like convince them that we had members. And then I'm like, well, if somebody joins us, they're a member. So we did free memberships and we kind of worked on like just flying by the seat of our pants just to make it happen. But going into the Board of Cosmetology, it kind of like gave me a really cool opportunity because now I saw how the Board of Cosmetology worked. And I would constantly like go in, hit all their meetings, have to talk to them, set it all up to get everything set. And once I got that set, they actually approached me and they're like, we have an opening for the Board of Cosmetology. You should apply. So I actually did, and I ended up getting on the Board of Cosmetology for the state of Minnesota then. I was on there for about 5 years
Cool.
because it was like, yeah, because it's like, well, That's where it all starts. I will tell everybody, get involved with your board of cosmetology, understand about it, otherwise don't complain about it.
I hear that from all the schools. That's what
You
they say
know,
when they
well,
complain about things.
the schools complain about things.
No, when salon owners complain about stuff with like the students,
Oh yeah,
it's like I mean, it happens in other industries too. Like the employers blame the schools, and the schools blame somebody else. But yeah, that's what they say. They're like, hey, our hands are tied. Like the state dictates what we're allowed to teach them. If you want to see changes, then you're gonna have to like get involved with the state board.
yeah, it's exactly what it is. If you want changes, you have to go to the state board and just like figure out how it works. And it doesn't mean you have to be on the board, but at least show up in the meetings. Maybe get to a point where you can like talk about it. It's and because state like the board of cosmetology, so many people don't understand that the board of cosmetology can't change laws. They can only change what's in rules. And so if it's a law, you can't change it. And the only way it can be changed is if somebody goes through and lobbies and works with the Senate and actually changes it on a state level, which is completely, yeah, I don't think most people understand how that works. So that's why every state has laws and
Right.
rules, because the rules is all the board of cosmetology can adjust, and it usually takes about 2 to 3 year process to change a rule.
There you go. Okay.
Because yeah, it takes about 2 to 3 years because you first the board has to discuss it, then it has to go to like a public forum, and then it has to go to and then it has to go to a judge to approve, and then it has to go through back to a town hall, and then it has to go through back to the judge, and then it has to go to the governor.
Oh wow. So like if you wanted to change the curriculum, you'd have to go through all those steps
Yep.
to adjust it. Wow.
Yeah.
That's interesting because now that we live in an Instagram and TikTok world, 2 to 3 year process is kind of daunting.
It's a
Uh,
lifetime.
yeah, so like I think that's good. I'm glad I'm gonna ask some local folks too and confirm if our system's any different, but that's good to know. I think people need to know that, be prepared. Are you willing to fight the fight or you just want to complain?
Yeah, it's not an easy fight. It takes time. And yeah, it takes a lot of time for that. But yeah, that's where Beauty Certified came out of. And out of that association, then, so we started doing continuing education, and we really try to like pull different salons and every salon together. We don't, we're trying to break all of those crazy barriers of like product or, like community or like don't steal our clients or don't steal our staff, and really just get people to understand that we're only stronger if we're together. And it's kind of, I think that's kind of been the main focus, especially in the last couple of years. We're really focusing on that. I almost rather focus on that than offering continuing education.
Mm, that's good. That's good. Okay, so I feel like that's gonna take me down another road of a completely conversation. Let's hear the rest of your story. We got co-owners of Steps Hair Shop, and then platform work and international education. Would you tell us about that?
Yeah, I mean, well, big thing that I started with education, as I said, with Horst salons, and doing that. That kind of like since I was in Minneapolis, I was in the city, I was right there. Anytime there was like any Aveda Congress or any kind of education happening through Aveda, I would just show up. I would just show up and be like, "Hey, can I volunteer? Can I help? Can I do this? Can I just jump in?" And I would like sweep the floor and assist people and just like get to know the artists and get to know the people that are in the community and just like be part of it until I bugged them enough until they were like, "Hey, you want to be part of the education team?" And so I ended up being part of the education team and the peer professional team, which was really great. Then it continued my education skills, my speaking skills. It really gave me the opportunity to meet more people and more salons, which was really cool. And it just kind of opened my eyes that the world is so much bigger than just one product line, though, too. Because now I'm going to like the Midwest Beauty Show, and I'm going to like some of the different shows back when they were involved in those, which was really awesome. And the sad part is when I left and I opened my own salon, I chose not to carry Aveda in my salon because
Interesting.
I didn't want to compete against David
Okay.
and Jew and Horst, and I didn't want to compete against. It was in every location, so I really wanted to make a different stand. So I ended up looking at a bunch of different lines. But what happened was it was our second year, and we were having a big anniversary party at our salon because we'd gone from like one employee to having like 10 employees in 1 year, and we were like really booming, and it was like going good. So we had this huge party. We always threw art parties anyways, and had a band playing and stuff, and it was super fun. So we went to this hair show that was in town. It was an ISSE show, and well, we were running around, and we invited every manufacturer and every art team and everybody that was there to come to the party because we're like, why not? It happened to be the same weekend. They might as well be here. We might as well invite them. And we told them all that we were shopping around for different product lines as carry. And the craziest thing happened because then all of a sudden, Robert Cromines and his whole crew, back then it was his whole team with like, trying to think who was all on it, Kelly Cardenas and Abe Barron. And um, they were, they were all like, his whole crew showed up, and they came in, and they were like, "Hey, this is a cool party." And then he was like, "Where's your Paul Mitchell?" And I was like, "We don't carry Paul Mitchell. Why would I carry Paul Mitchell?" And he was like, "Why wouldn't you?" And I'm like, "I don't know. Let's talk about it." So we started talking, and I built a relationship with Robert. And what happened was, through that relationship, then I ended up just, he's like, "Well, if you are interested and you want to teach with us, just, show up." So I took it upon myself to, once again, just start showing up. And I would go to every trade show, find a way to sneak in, whether it's get a model pass, whether it just go in through the back door, whatever it was. I would sneak in to every hair show across the country and just like start assisting, all of with Robert's team, Scott Cole's team. And then I just kept building in until they finally like, "Oh, how long have you been a national educator?" I'm like, "I'm not. I just show up." And so they then got me into the national education program. And then they asked me the next year to try out for their platform artist team, which was probably the most intense thing in the world because that was actually going up and doing presentations on a stage in front of John Paul DeJoria, Angus Mitchell, Stephanie Kachalski, Robert Cromine, Scott Cole, Linda Udici. And we had to like do presentations, and they'd be there filling out like, "Okay, he said 4 times. His yellow is a little pale." It would just, they would come up with all kinds of different things and then give us redirection. But I ended up being working with them for about 12 years, which was really cool. So I got to work on Angus's team. I worked a little bit with DJ Muldoon. I got to hang out and work with like pretty much everybody. It was cool because I got to meet a lot of people that are doing really cool stuff now. And I got to meet them when they were like in the beginning of their careers too.
Nice. And if anybody's listening or watching, you're not familiar with any or all of the names, they're basically like it's like a star-studded cast. Holly,
It's
imagine
kind
like
it's kind of ridiculous. Yeah.
it's like the top top people in that time, and some of them are still
Oh, they're
considered top
killing it.
people. Yeah.
Yeah, they're killing it. I mean, they are totally killing it, which leads into how I actually ended up with co-owning Steps Hair dot shop. So, and like one of the guys that I first met during that period, his name is Travis Smith, and Travis was an assistant. Well, actually, when I first met him, he was at Paul Mitchell's school in Costa Mesa, and I was doing a class there. where I first met him, and then I met him as an assistant, and he was an assistant at Robert Cromie's, and then he would assist at some of the shows, and I would see him at the shows, and then he quit. He disappeared, and he ended up at like doing some stuff with Sassoon and was working with Sassoon. And as Sassoon was ending in Chicago for him, him and I, like during the pandemic, we were talking a bunch, and he was like, I want to work on this thing. We're going to build this like store, online store. It'll be super cool. And he had this idea, and he's like, how do I do it? And I'm like helping him like build a store and like helping doing things. And finally he was like, do you just want to help be my business partner with this? And I'm like, yeah, I'll do that. That's cool. And so we ended up, because we're both nerds about tools, it's like you got to have good tools. Tools matter, and it's like, so we started bringing in and just playing and working with, so we carry like YS Park, Sessibon, leader combs. We make our own Sessibon that's like lavender. It's can only buy it through us. We do sell some to like Hairbrain and those guys just because why not? And it's cool because so we started just doing stepshair.shop and just it's fun.
And
Uh
so stepshair.shop is an online store that you
an
can buy
online
to.
store. Yeah. So we have right now we have combs, clips, vest brushes. We're looking at a few more things. We do carry Mike Carg shears. We do have one of our own shears that we just put out, which is cool. We have travel cases, scissor wallets. So we're working on some really cool stuff for this coming out this year and the next few months, which I'm kind of excited about.
Nice.
We're changing it up a little bit.
Cool, man. This sounds you've definitely covered a lot of bases in your career so far. So I have a question that I'm sure there's a young person, like a rising stylist, or
Yeah.
not even a young person. Maybe they've been in the industry for a little bit and they want to get into education, and they're hearing your story about how you just show up and you volunteer. The question is, I know what they're thinking is, how long until you started actually making money being on, like, how long, like, if someone's like, I'm down to do that, but I just want to know, like, is it going to be a year? Is it going to be like 2 years? Is it going to be like 3 months? What would you say to that person? Because that's,
Don't
sorry,
do, oh,
before you
okay,
answer.
yeah, I'm going to tell you. You ready?
Okay, yeah.
If you're doing it for the money, you're doing it for the wrong reason.
Yeah, I
It's
know, but
not because here's the thing. Working on a national education program for a manufacturer is not about the money. It's
yeah,
about building and growing and building a network of people. But if you want to do it for the money, I mean, you will make money, but that was is not my living. My living has been always working behind the chair 40 hours a week, you know, doing hair until 3 years ago it was that's all I've ever done. 3 years ago, I shifted and pivoted for the first time in my life, and I was like, "Oh shit, what am I doing?" Um, you know,
why is that? Why is that?
because at that point, because I decided to focus instead of on clients, I was going to focus on education and really just focus on like education, coaching, and helping and growing. And so, like, I just 3 years ago, I took a job helping a salon rewrite their education program, rebuild their team after they lost about half of them. And they lost about 45 people in their four salons. And I like helped them regrow it back. And I think it was really, but so until that point, I made all my money behind the chair. I did education, I got paid for that. But ultimately, what that did is it paid me to then take other classes.
Totally.
This is how I look at it. You
Yeah.
know, the only way that you're going to truly make a living behind, doing just education, then you have to follow what DJ Muldoon or follow what Ira Sage is doing. But even Ira works behind the chair.
I was gonna say, doesn't he have a salon?
He still works behind the chair, yeah. And it's like you have to like it's behind the chairs where you make all your money. The other stuff is like fun until you can switch it where you have enough demand that people will pay you to come in and do as much education. And that just takes years. And to be honest, I still to this level, I can't say, I charge $1,500 a day for an educational event, which isn't very much compared
Sounds
to
like a lot for one day,
it
but
does,
not when
but
you're working full time behind the chair and you got a full book. All of a sudden, that number doesn't sound the same.
exactly,
And you
exactly.
can't do as many classes. You can't teach as many classes
No,
throughout the year. So, like, what are you going to teach once a week? I mean, that's $75,000 a year. You know,
right, exactly. That's what I'm saying. It's like you're not gonna like until you can build that demand where you're making $4,000 or $5,000 a day doing a class because you're not really going to do more than 2 or 3 classes a day or 2 or 3 classes, 4 classes a month. Let's say that's even a lot.
right. So then that 75,000 number gets shrank down significantly,
Ex-
maybe even it cut in half.
exactly.
Yeah, because you would need so
Education
much demand. You would have to work yourself up there to be at that level before you can get there. So
and
saddle up, get ready
exactly,
for a long ride.
exactly. I mean, and that's the thing. It's like education is great, but you know, really most people that make their money, they're going to make the most bang for their buck behind the chair, whether they're working 2 days, one day. You know, for me, it was pretty bold to take and go so that I mean, I still work behind the chair one day a month, but now I'm working behind the chair for fun.
Yeah.
But it's like I want to shift. I'm probably going to shift it again, so I'm like behind the chair a little bit more because it's like you still need to make a living. You know,
Yeah.
yes, education does it so far, but unless in right now there are less and less people doing hands-on classes, and there are less and less people like they want to see everything on video, and it's hard to make that same cash on video.
Yeah, I feel like that's another conversation. There's two conversations you talked about, like education and like the state board, and then in making change and community building, and then
Yeah.
there's that. So,
No, no,
uh,
I would love to come in and talk more. It's like, well, I can talk about this stuff all day. I don't know.
yeah.
I love this stuff. It's like it's fun.
Well, so what would you, as we wrap it up here, I'm curious, some messages, some takeaways for the folks watching. Let's start with the rising stylist, like someone that's kind of excited about their career. They are, they've had a screen in their hand since they were little ones, so they're kind of enamored with the kind of the folks that they see
Yeah.
on social media, and a lot of them want to be there. And so, what would you say? Because it sounds like you got some advice that you could totally give. So, what would you say to those folks?
Well, starting out, I mean, the biggest thing that I can tell you is say yes to every opportunity that you can make. And I like to say what you can make, not what opportunities arise, because they're always around, but which ones are you actually going to commit to? Which ones can you make happen? And I would really say yes to everything that you possibly can. Learn as much as you can. Don't get too stuck in saying, I'm a blonding specialist after 1 year of school, because you're not a blonding specialist. Sorry to tell you. You have to be able to be a blonding specialist. You better be able to blonde every single hair texture, every single type, every single. So study, learn, 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 and continuously learn every year for the rest of your life. Commit to going to 2 or 3 hands-on classes a year because I mean I just think that's super important. You know, I was just I'm already looking at what 2 classes, hands-on classes I can take this year. I haven't been able to take one yet this year, but I'm planning out for like fall. I'm going to take 2. Where am I going to take them? Who am I going to take them from? You know, travel to take classes from if it's so and so that's on Instagram, that's your favorite person in the world, if they're doing a hands-on class, go see them. Go
Yeah,
take
for
it.
sure. Totally.
Hands-on. Look and learn. You can watch that online.
Yeah, and I think the look and learn, I think people should like this might ruffle some feathers.
That's all right. Let's do it.
But I think people just need to wake up and accept the fact that look and learn is more about inspiration, motivation, and maybe
Yeah.
seeing one little thing that you're going to try.
Yeah.
But if you want to learn how to do something, it has to be hands on. There
Yeah.
is no other way. Sorry to everybody who
No.
does the stuff and the look and learn, but that is complementary. That is not supplementary. So
Exactly.
yeah.
Look and learn is all about inspiration. It's all about like, but inspiration doesn't do you any good unless you can turn around and motivate it into something.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important, but I
Oh,
think
it's
what I've
vital.
noticed is that the where I'm getting in off topic here, but I've
That's
noticed
all
that
right.
the like the cycle was like the insta famous first folks were like really awesome. Everyone wanted to see them, and then it got flooded behind the chair, put them all up on stage, and like now there are so many
Yeah.
influencer educators and what I'm now hearing is that folks are starting to say, you know what, actually, I didn't get as much value out of that as I thought because,
Yeah.
like, getting like a famous person in the first place is super fun and inspirational, motivational. Just having like it's like having a celebrity come into the salon, and then
Exactly.
and then to see them do some hair, you might be like, oh, I'm gonna try that. And I think there's value, but I think it's waning. I think that we've been so saturated and inundated with look and learn, showy stuff where I think this could just be my own delusion I'm living in. And I don't have any data to back this up, just like anecdotal. But it seems like people are starting to scrutinize the value of the education that they get a little bit more to where I think academy level education, like an Ashley Norman or a DJ Muldoon, would they those are the type of people that are like they've been there, they've been doing that, like theory thick education, teaching you how to do things. And I think that there's a demand for that coming, although like I said, I got no data to back that one up.
I hope it comes back, because that's what I feel like I do extremely well too. It's like, it is, I think hands-on education is where you're going to like, that's where you learn the kinetics of it. I mean, you're not going to understand your body position. You're not going to understand why you're holding a scissor a certain way. And I think for a young person coming into this, one of the biggest things that you got to learn not to say is, well, I don't like to do it that way.
Yeah.
You have to like learn to understand why they're teaching you that way, because there is a reason for each step, and once you understand the reason for each step, then you can be creative and do whatever you want. There's no right way or wrong way to do hair, but if you're studying a craft by, let's say, if you're studying, going to Sassoon to learn the ABCs, you got to cut the way they're doing the ABCs.
Right.
If you're going to I Am Academy in Croatia, which I highly recommend everybody to do. If you want to be a great hair cutter, go there.
Okay,
They'll
cool.
make you use section for an hour and a half just to get the section perfect. It will drive you crazy, but it's really great. I can't wait to go again. But you have to put your ego aside and what you already know and just practice what people are telling you to do. And when you do that, that's when you actually learn the most. And I think that's really important.
Awesome. Okay, so how about the aspiring salon owner?
Oh, the
What
aspiring
advice would you
salon
have for
owner,
them?
you're going to make a lot of mistakes. And if you don't, awesome. That's amazing. And I'm going to tell you,
Well,
you're going to make a lot of mistakes and be okay with it. I made mistakes. I had two major walkouts. Went from like 20 stylists to 10 one day. Then I went from another time for like 30 stylists to like 15. When you have major walkouts, you're going to have them. But guess what? Guess whose fault it is? It's not the stylist's fault. It's your fault. And So you have to own it, but be okay with you're going to make mistakes because you don't know what you're doing. And there's not really a handbook. And you can listen to every coach out there. They're all going to give you different advice. There's a million of them. In fact, there's too many coaches right now. And I would just really say trust your instincts, work with your team, be really open to listen to what your team is saying. If they're saying something, there's a reason why they're saying something. Make sure that they feel okay coming to talk to you. That'll save you. You know, the only reason that I can step away from my salon right now and not be there for almost 3 years, except for one day a month to come in and do some hair, is because I built a system and people trust me and they trust my team and they trust each other. And it took me 20 some years to figure that stuff out, but you can do that. It's really important. So if you're like wanting to start a salon, first of all, know why you want to open a salon. If you don't understand why, you just want to do it because I want to open a salon. Well, that's why
I
I
want
opened
to
a
be
salon.
rich.
I want to be
I
rich.
want to make money. That's like
Big,
one of the biggest reasons that I hear.
if you want to make money, work for somebody who's really busy, who's going to help you grow. To be really honest, it's a much faster route. I made more. It took me years. Remember, I said David Wagner gave me a number and said, "Do you want to will you stay here?" It took me years to make that number.
That's good.
Years,
That's
years to
good.
make that
No,
number.
because that's really good to hear because you're not the first person to say that they made more money behind the chair, and it took them a really long time to make the money that they were making behind the chair. And I don't
Exactly.
think that anybody talk. I don't think enough people talk about that. So thank you
No,
so much for saying that.
yeah, it just takes years for that, and you still. I mean, I'm not. I can honestly say, even though my salon we run multi-million dollars, it's like I'm not still getting rich over it because I would rather give that money back to my team because I know that then they're going to stay. It's like it's a place for me to work, but it's a place for them to work. And if you are a salon, you want to open a salon, you will open it so that you are giving other people an opportunity to become successful. I can't become successful as a hairdresser or as a salon owner unless my team and my staff is successful. If they're not successful, then I'm a failure. Even if I made all the money, well, still, then I'm a failure. I'm a terrible boss, and they should all walk out on me. So there you go. That's my advice to a salon owner. Listen to your people and be real.
That's good. Well, thank you so much for taking the time and sharing your story. And I definitely want to have you back on to have those conversations, the community building and the state of education in the industry. Um, I think, I think both of those conversations are really important, especially the community building one. I think it's really passionate about, and clearly you know how to do that. So I definitely would like to have you back on. But
Well, thank
until
you.
then, uh, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Well, thank you so much for having me on the show. It's always a pleasure to chat with other like-minded people, and it's awesome. So thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. All right. Take care.
Take care.